Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. Well, I don't know about you, but recently I've been hearing a lot more about a possible recession coming up. Now, although I've got a rough idea what a recession is, I thought, well, there's one coming up. This is a good opportunity to better understand what is a recession. The first article that I read, it was actually on Wikipedia. Generally, a lot of my research starts on Wikipedia. And it had a really good definition. It says a recession is a business cycle contraction when there is a general decline in economic activity. Quite general, isn't it? But what this means is, well, there's a drop in spending. This, well, it's not the only definition for a recession, but I thought, yeah, it really summarises it quite succinctly, doesn't it? There are a couple of other ones. These are like the main ones. The first one, it's the definition that's used by the US. And it says that a recession is a significant decline in economic activity spread across the market, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in real GDP, that's gross domestic product, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Wow, what a mouthful that sentence is, isn't it? Or there is a definition which is used by the UK, and that is a recession is a negative economic growth for 2 consecutive quarters. Actually, I quite like that one. I know they're both still vague, but that last one, again succinct, tells you easily and quickly what it is. Now, most of the definitions that I've seen, they talked about a business cycle. The business cycle, it's made up of 4 phases. The first one, expansion. This is where household demand increases. Businesses, they're hiring workers. Wages and prices, they're generally increasing at a nice steady pace. The end of the expansion phase, that's called the peak. Following the peak, we've got the contraction phase. This is where household demand falls, businesses need fewer workers, and everything starts to shrink. The end, well, this is called a trough phase. Now, these business cycles and even the individual phases, they vary in length. In cases of a severe recession, where the GDP is down more than 10%, or a prolonged one, that means it's running for 3 years or more, this is commonly referred to as an economic depression. And many economists, they think, well, the solutions to the economic depression, they're different to the solutions that you would use for a recession. Let's take a look at some background. The economist Richard C. Koo, he states that under ideal conditions, a country's economy should have the household section as net savers, the corporate sector as net borrowers, and the government budget that should be nearly balanced, and the net exports should be near zero. Very wordy again, isn't it? Recessions, they can have both psychological and confidence impacts on people. During a recession, companies, they tend to start to reduce spending. They let people go, employment levels, they start to drop, and the companies, they start to save money rather than invest in it. And the problem with this, it tends to create a self-reinforcing spiral, which often it worsens the recession rather than helping. This reduction in spending, as I've already suggested, it leads to increased unemployment. And this unemployment, it actually takes a long time to recover. It often takes years after the recession has ended for the unemployment levels to come back to the same levels they were before the recession. This increase in the time for unemployment levels to come down, that's actually driven by businesses. During the recession, they invested in new ways of working. They found ways to do things with fewer people. So they need less people to create their products. Therefore, there's less demand for people. There's less jobs available for them. A lot of employers, they also believe that unemployed people, that they've lost the skills and the knowledge that they originally had due to lack of use whilst being unemployed. I've got to be honest, I've done some digging. I haven't spent a long time, but I haven't been able to find any research to confirm this assumption by employers. Business productivity, That also tends to be reduced during a recession, but the impact is felt more at the start of the recession because as it goes on, more and more smaller companies, well, they're closing down and they're moving and working for the large companies, which helps to drive the productivity. There are also some major social effects of a recession, and these are the ones that hurt the worst. Now, those on wages or salaries, they tend not to be severely impacted. They are a little bit, but those on a fixed income or welfare payments, they're the ones that feel the biggest impact. This is due to the fixed income not being able to match the rapid increase in costs. The loss of a job, that's also got a major impact on family stability and an individual's health and well-being. There is a form of recession called a balance sheet recession. This, it's named after the accounting term that assets, they should equal liabilities plus equity. If the asset price falls below the value of the liabilities, then that means there's a negative equity. It means that the entity is now insolvent. And this, it's often seen in real estate or financial bubbles. When these bubbles burst, a large number of companies and consumers, they begin to pay down debts and start to save rather than invest. The result, it slows the economy. Now, there's a really good example of this, and it's in Japan. They had what's called the Great Recession, and that started in 1990. Land and stock prices, they collapsed. This caused a lot of Japanese firms to have negative equity. Their assets, they were worth less than their liabilities. Even though the interest rates in Japan, they were nearly zero, Japanese firms, they still preferred to pay down debt rather than borrow to invest. Corporate investment dramatically fell from 1990 to 2003. That's 13 years. In 1998, Japanese companies, they became net savers. The theory goes that with interest rates being near zero, this will encourage companies to borrow and to make investments. This didn't happen in Japan. Too many companies and consumers paying down debt and saving, well, that's also referred to as the paradox of thrift. And this paradox, it's got the effect of deepening the recession. There are a number of actions that governments take to try and fetch themselves out of recession. This includes things like they reduce interest rates, they reduce tax rates, they increase government spending. The idea is to try and stimulate consumer spending. This increases demand, which in turn increases production. There has been some research to see if stock market movements can be used to predict possible recessions. There have been 10 recessions that were preceded by a stock market decline in the prior 13 months. The average lead time for this, 5.7 months. But there have been 10 stock market declines that did not lead to a recession. This, it's an area, it needs further investigation. The real estate market, well, that tends to weaken during a recession. And similar to unemployment, the real estate markets, they take a long time to recover after the recession ends. There have been a number of recessions in the past. We've weathered them all, haven't we? Are we heading into another recession? Well, that's still unclear. But in researching this video, well, I do feel I've got a better understanding of what one is. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. What are your thoughts about recessions? I know chances are I've missed out loads of stuff. If you're able to add, why not drop a comment down below? I'd love to grow my own knowledge about what a recession is, what the impacts is. Please hit the thumbs up button. Every time you like, every time you comment, just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.